This is Jim with Harvest Harmonics, and welcome to the Profitable Farmer. And today's episode, we're going to be talking about what I'm sure is on everybody's mind right now, and that is fertilizer costs. It's not something we like to talk about. It's not something we are joyous about the rising cost of fertilizer. But let's face it, if we're going to talk about profitability, we need to talk about fertilizer because the situation now is getting stupid. It's getting crazy. In fact, I want to share with you just before we get into how we can help you with this problem. Let's just take a look at what the problem itself is. I'm going to show you just what the Illinois prices were, but I'm going to show you historical average just so you guys have a better idea of what we're looking at. So, um, as we see here, the cost of anhydrous ammonia, and this is obviously a big for corn farmers especially, but you see it's at its highest level since 2015. But what you should also see is the DAP and potash price index is also way high. Now, obviously, if we look at over here, what it looked like from 2020 to 2021, obviously it was at a relatively low period of $400 or $500 per ton. But up here in the last, I don't know, last half of 2021 and now here up to 2022 in April, we see it's just taken a huge jump. It's more than doubled, in some cases tripled. But the interesting thing about this graph here is not just one thing. It's actually, look at all three. All three of these graphs are going up simultaneously. So even if you look back here in 2015, where the anhydrous ammonia cost was high, at least the DAP and potash prices were relatively low. But now we see here going up to 2022, all three of these are starting to go up. And especially this bottom graph here, this potash, right? Potash is basically, of course, potassium. And we see this cost going up too. Well, this is actually just now hitting, I think this was cut off at the end of February. So we're talking about right in the beginning of the war with Ukraine. We see stand with Ukraine here, right at the beginning of this war with Ukraine. Is where this graph ends. So if you look at now, if we look at the current prices, they're probably up into here, the $800-900 range. So if you guys are wondering to yourself what the trend is for fertilizer, it could hit its highest levels ever. In fact, in some cases, I'm hearing some people tell me it's up to $1,000-1,100. So the graphs might actually be up in this range at the top of this graph here. And this is unfortunately the live the last one we can get. The other one here I want to show you is this fertilizer graph. And this is just general fertilizer nutrient costs. And this is, again, over the last 10 years, actually since 95. And here we see back in 95, you were paying, $100, $200 per ton. And now it did spike in 2008 when, of course, supply chain. And remember 2008? Remember what the economy looked like back then when the economy crashed, too many bankers making too many bad loans and caused this whole economic crash. What does that do to prices? It spikes the cost of everything all the way up to 1,100. And now again, we have the things kind of just started going down, down, down. And then in 2020, COVID hits, and look what happens to the pricing again. Nitrogen skyrocket. It's all the way up to over $1,000 a ton. You have potash, potassium, and phosphorus. These are increasing as well. And again, this graph only goes to 2021. We wanted to show you the historical average. And so we didn't have the actual up-to-date numbers here, but the prices are going way up. And we're not talking about just small prices. Now, if you're a corn farmer or a commodity farmer, you may not necessarily be feeling the negative effects because the prices of your goods or your sell price is going up also, right? So it's not just the price of your cost of goods, but you're seeing an increase. However, guys like almond growers and berry growers and tomato growers and other specialty crop growers, their specialty prices have not jumped up in the same way that some of these commodity prices have. And as a result, they're losing a lot of money than they used to be able to make. I mean, commodity growers used to only be able to make $100 to $200 an acre, and their profitability is staying flat because their sell price is going up along with the cost of their inputs. However, specialty crop growers don't have that luxury. Their sell price isn't going up; it's stayed relatively flat. And when your sell price stays flat and your cost increased by 200 or 300%, as you can well imagine, your profitability goes way down, right? So I want to showcase something, and believe me, if you watch the show or if you have worries about fertilizer and worries about profitability and worries about what you can do to stay profitable, I want you to pay attention to this because this is going to be very, very important. Now, I also want you to, of course, make sure you give us a call at some point during the end of the show. We'll work with you in terms of special show pricing here. My number is 727-324-6750. And of course, you can go to our website at harvestharmonics.com to get more information about this technology. But I want to showcase with you what you can do about this. Now, the key term for sustainable profitability for any operation, and farming is no different, is of course not just to reduce input costs and reduce your fertilizer and those types of costs, but you have to get more efficient. You have to get more efficient. You can't just reduce fertilizer costs and reduce your yield, because then you're not making as much on the sale end of it, right? You have to reduce your fertilizer costs but increase your yield. And the only way you can do that is by making your plants more efficient. And the only way you can make your plant more efficient is to do things that are going to stimulate and improve the metabolic process of the plant, namely photosynthesis. And of course, if you've watched our show before, that's exactly what our system does. Our Kiminasi plant booster is geared toward improving photosynthesis efficiency so that the plants will generate as much energy as possible, even in bad weather conditions or other problems. So if you're looking at fertilizer costs doubling, tripling, quadrupling, and you're worried, how am I going to make a profit in this? Then you have to really jump on board now and take advantage and take action now. You don't have time to wait till the end of the year. You don't have time to just grin and bear it. You don't have time to hope that next year is going to be better, because I can almost guarantee you that unless this whole geopolitical thing with Russia just ends tomorrow, and even if it does end tomorrow, these types of systems, these types of supply chain issues, as we've already seen, have a tendency to take a long time to sort of ramp up again. We saw this with COVID, where things took almost 2 years, and all of a sudden now we see transport costs and gas prices and fuel costs and everything else are skyrocketing, which is a big part of this increase in fertilizer cost. But now that we have Russia and Ukraine and supply issues, especially going into Europe and the Middle East and other areas, that's going to make the whole supply, the demand is still there, but the supply is going to be reduced. And when that happens, of course, we see huge jack up in price. So they're already seeing price increases just because they're predicting these things. But imagine what happens when it takes another year to 2 years for the world economy and transport service to sort of recover from this. And this is all, of course, assuming that this whole thing with Ukraine and Russia ends relatively quickly. And of course, we all hope it does. But if it doesn't, this could prolong the agony. And if you're not doing something right now to improve your farm, you're going to lose money. You may not be profitable next year, and you may get to the point where you find you don't even have the wherewithal to actually continue farming, because these systems are just not set up for this type of increase in cost. So I want to share with you just one example of a cost benefit analysis. By the way, this is a free service that we do for all farmers, anybody that we talk to one-on-one. We do a cost benefit on your farm to show you how much money you can make with our system and to show you how much we can reduce your overall input costs. So I want to share this with you just so you have an idea the kinds of things we look at. This is one we did just a few days ago. This was done on apples. Now, what we do is we ask the guy, okay, good. So how many total, how big is your farm? In this case, he's got 1,000 hectares of apples. So he's a fairly large grower. We asked him his pesticide costs. And by the way, his pesticide cost was about $400 a hectare. So not doing too bad there. So he says, I asked him, how many tons per hectare are you producing in these apples? He said, I do about 56 tons. He does about 80 tons altogether, but the rest of the other 24 tons, he said, are low quality or poor quality. So 56 tons of his good quality apples. And he says he makes about $408 a ton. So what we say is, look, if I can increase your yield by 20% on your apples, which is a low estimate for our Kiminasi plant booster system, then that means you're going to generate an extra 11 tons of high quality apples. It's going to generate at 408 a ton. You're going to generate $4,069 per hectare, which is your extra production per hectare, not acre here in this case. But he's got 1,000 hectares. 1,000 hectares is roughly 2,500 acres. So that means he's going to make $4.5 million in extra revenue by increasing his yield by 20%. And that's going to translate into 2 years, because our device lasts for 2 years, of $9 million in extra profit. Now, of course, if I charge him, and I'm not going to charge him 2,000, but let's say if I charge him 2,000 a hectare, he's still paying for my device and he's still making an extra $3,500. Okay, now let's just say if it's $1,500, it might be like $3,800. But now imagine what happens when I can reduce his fertilizer costs, because that's something he's going to see. And he was telling me that, for example, on his lettuce and some of his other crops, he's using 18 different pesticides. 18. Now, I want you to stop and think about that. If you're a farmer or not a farmer, just somebody watching this, I want you to stop and think. Imagine eating lettuce. This is lettuce, by the way. Lettuce is one of the most absorbing crops in terms of chemicals and pesticides, right? So one of the if you're not eating organic lettuce, it's very, very unhealthy to eat with a lot of pesticides. Sorry, try not to sneeze. Sorry about that. But in fact, I'm sneezing. Just the thought of it makes me want to sneeze, right? I mean, it's that big of a deal. But I said, "Look, you're using 18 different pesticides. That means everybody who eats your lettuce is eating that lettuce with 18 different pesticides." Now, we got into this business, my company got into this business because we realized that the only way to dramatically improve human health from a longevity standpoint across all of humanity was to improve the quality of fruits and vegetables that we're eating. Of course, when we found a Kiminasi plant booster, we knew we had a solution that we had to promote. We had to get this out there. We had to get farmers using it because of the health implications of using all these pesticides, right? Petrochemical use and pesticide use is not healthy for human consumption. I don't care what the EPA says or what the FDA says or any of these things. You can imagine how much, if you just continue to ingest all these pesticides over time, you're going to have all kinds of problems. You're going to have allergic problems. You're going to have obesity problems. You're going to have autoimmune diseases. You're going to have a lot of health problems by eating these pesticides over a long period of time. And I talked to this guy, this grower of apples who happens to have lettuce, and I said, "Look, you're putting 18 different pesticides on your crops. First of all, from just the economic standpoint, that has to be costing you a fortune." He said, "Yeah, it's costing me 400 a hectare." Now, 400 a hectare is not a tremendous amount of cost when you factor in apples, for example. But I said, "What if I can cut those 18 pesticides in half? What if I can give you half of that?" In other words, if I did nothing, if my technology did nothing else for you other than cutting your pesticides in half, first of all, I'm going to feel a lot better. I'm going to sleep better at night because I know I helped a guy that has 1,000 hectares of lettuce and growing probably, how many hundreds of tons of lettuce over the course of a year. I'm going to help him save 50% of his fertilizer and 50% of his overall input costs. Now that means that translated that number, if you didn't see it, from $3,800 in extra profit to over 4,000. Now, a guy that's using 18 different pesticides, it does not need to use 18 different pesticides, and I suspect that I'm going to get more like a 75% decrease in overall use. So that basically right there is a $400 per hectare difference in terms of profitability. So if you want to know how to really increase your profitability, especially in a market where fertilizer and chemicals and other costs are skyrocketing, the answer is to use a system that's going to help you become more efficient. And the Kiminasi Plant Booster is going to do exactly that. So even if I charged him $3,000 a hectare, which is nowhere near the cost of my system, he's still going to be making a lot of money on these apples. And of course, the benefit is you're going to use less chemicals. So but I've talked to corn growers. They're spending $800. Or some specialty growers, they're spending $800 an acre, right? So that'd be 800 a hectare. I mean, that might be $500-600 an acre. Imagine if I can cut that by 75%. That just increases the profitability. So again, there's multiple ways that you can become more profitable. Of course, what all farmers look at, because it's the simplest to calculate, the simplest to figure out, is I just want to increase yield, right? If I can increase my yield by 20 or 30%, then I know that I'm making more money because I know that I can sell that money. It shows right up on the income statements, and I know exactly how much I made. I can just take my total yield, total my output cost, my input cost, and can subtract it from my sale cost, and I know exactly how much money I made that year, right? Very easy calculation, but it's also a little bit lazy. If you really want to improve your efficiency, that's how you're really ultimately going to squeeze out as much profit as you can on your farm, because it's not always possible to increase your yield 20, 30, 40%. I mean, even if you use my system and you increase your yield by 20%, that's 20% of your current production. That's not going to be 20% year over year over year over year, where you're going to end up with a 100% increase over 3 or 4 years. That's going to be 20%. And then you're going to be at that higher range, right? Then you're going to be in that normal range up here as opposed to right here. So you're going to see a tremendous improvement, but your input costs are going to keep going up with inflation, with transportation costs, with silly governments that just want to tax everything into oblivion. Let's face it, you don't have a lot of control over those things. What you do have control over is how efficient your plants are at utilizing the resources you have. So if we can help make your plant more efficient, that means you use 50% less fertilizer, 50% less pesticides, 50% less herbicides, 50% less fungicides. I mean, we are showing on university trials where we're helping farmers use less chemicals and less water and less other inputs, and that's going to save you guys a fortune. So if you want to reduce input costs, the simplest way to do that and the most important and easy way to do that is to just give us a call at 727-324-6750. I will do a cost benefit analysis like I just showed you on your farm with your crops and your numbers so that you can see exactly how much more money you're going to make with our system. And then when we go to install your system, know that everything we have is a money back guarantee if it doesn't work. So far, we haven't had a single farmer in over 600 farms ever ask for their money back because our system always works. It just always works. When you can improve the metabolism of the plants and the photosynthesis process in the plants, which is what our system does, you will see tremendous results and you'll be able to save a ton of money on fertilizer, and you won't have to worry so much. You can kick your feet up while everybody else is freaking out about fertilizer cost and freaking out about pesticides. You can kick your feet up and say, hey, I got the Kiminasi plant pusher. I don't need to worry about that stuff. My farm is being more efficient and it's using less fertilizer than ever before and in producing better crops as a result. So if you want to become part of the future of farming today, if you want to become a farm that doesn't have to stress out over increasing in fertilizer and other input costs, give me a call today at 727-324-6750. Let's outfit your farm with the Kiminasi plant booster and help you become part of the most profitable farming operations in the world with the Kiminasi plant booster. I look forward to talking to you guys very soon, and we'll talk again tomorrow. Have a great day.